Before I went to carnivore, I took out lectins and oxalates, and that was a huge improvement, but it wasn't enough. And that's another thing. I hear some people saying, I did 20 days of carnivore and I'm not feeling better. Well, some things, I say carnivore will fix most things. It won't fix a flat tire, but it will do a lot. Carnivore is a lot about nutrition, as you said, but it's what you eat, but what you don't eat.
Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant-Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special guest, Cecilia Berlim, who is joining us all the way from the south of Brazil. Cecilia, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here and speaking about meat, about animal protein, animal fat, and about good choices.
Sounds good. For people that don't know you, haven't come across you, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I just turned 47 a few days ago, and I'll be turning 5 years carnivore in 3 days.
Nice.
So I'm very excited about that. And it's a very important date because it's half a decade that I've been eating mostly ruminant meat. After 25 years, before that I didn't eat meat at all. And in my birthday, 5 years ago, I was told that I was on stage for renal function loss due to medications, trying to heal, in a medical controlled pharmaceutical universe, and that wasn't happening. So despite being very sick for a very long time, and despite trying everything to reverse that, I decided, why not try carnivore? And that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And in 90 days, I reversed my kidney loss.
Wow.
So I was on stage 4, and in 90 days, I reversed that.
Yeah, wow.
And I was off my meds, which I thought I would never be off my medication. You know, medicine today is, I'm very grateful for everything that we can have today, and help with all the symptoms that sometimes we need medication for. But we are told to have these medications for our whole lives instead of just, a period of our lives. And it wasn't helping me. It was actually making me more sick. I lost my hair due to chemo and monoclonals, and then I lost my kidney function. And my autoimmunes were still there, my pains, and carnivore reversed that. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for meat. I'm grateful for animal protein, animal fat, and I'm healthy. My kidney's working, my autoimmune's reversed, and my hair grew back. So I'm feeling very thankful for this half decade.
Oh, well, that's amazing. So, how did you come to carnivore? Because it's more recently become a bit more commonly known about, but 5 years ago, not many people were talking about it.
No, especially here in Brazil. So I was born here in Brazil, and when I was around 8 years old, we moved to the United States. I had the opportunity to go to the United States. And this is the beginning, I think, of a big change in my health. In Brazil, things would take a little bit longer to arrive. So McDonald's, fast food would arrive here in the 90s. So when I moved to the United States in the early 80s, I came in contact with fast food, and it was very different from what we were used to eating in Brazil in the late 70s and the 80s. The staple food here is rice and beans. People eat rice and beans. And rice was washed, and beans were cooked for a long time. And I know now about lectins, I know about anti-nutrients, but like Bill Schindler says, it's a lot of what you eat, but also how you eat it, right? So how the food is prepared. And the food was prepared in a more traditional way, and there was also, plant food, but also animal protein with it. And I moved to United States, and suddenly I'm going to school there, and we're eating cold pizza with skim milk, because it was also, a low fat fad. People were already talking about taking fat, especially animal fat, from our diets. And that is a big problem, especially for girls who are going into their teens and their hormones, need fat, good quality fat. And when I was 13 in the United States, all this movement against meat was already happening. So there was this big propaganda. And teenagers are very vulnerable. They're very gullible. They think they're going to change the world. And it's true, young people do bring, new ways of thinking. But it's very naive to think that you can live without meat. And I was very naive. I believe that. I was a dancer. My dancing friends were not eating meat anymore. And that's when I stopped eating red meat. So I was 13. And this is very critical, because I know some teenagers are stopping to eat meat now. Some young people are stop eating meat. I was that young person, and I did that for 25 years. 25 years, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. And very, about a year after I stopped eating meat, I started to have symptoms that are considered normal in our society. We live in a very sick society. And people say that a lot of the disease symptoms are considered normal. So girls missing their periods while you're a dancer, you're very skinny, that is normal. Teenagers having pimples or mood swings, well, that is normal. And today I see it's not a normal symptom. It's a disease symptom. And then about 2 years into that, I started to lose something that now I know was a neurofunction problem. So my cognition got worse. And then there's all this, talk about kids, teenagers not wanting to study or having, attention deficit. And you're told that there are normal symptoms in this disease world, and they're not normal. So I was an honor student, and then suddenly I can't remember what I read. I would read lots of books, and then I was, reading again the same chapter because I couldn't remember. A little, about 2 years after that, I had to stop dancing because my knee was aching a lot. And again, that is normal for a teenager that dances a lot. It's normal for someone who's growing up. And then, there's this talk about chondromalacia, and you're giving shots, you're giving cortisone shots in a teenager, which is
Not great.
not nice at all. And I ended up coming back to Brazil on a wheelchair because my knee pain was just really bad. And I was told at 16 that I would never ride a bike again, that I couldn't live in a house with stairs, that I wouldn't run, and that I should probably do nothing and stop, any kind of stressful sports, or which makes no sense. You're young and we're supposed to move. We're humans. We are supposed to be moving. And I was told not to move. So meat, not eating red meat, I think, was the big problem in all of this, but also all this situation where medicine wasn't diagnosing the symptoms as what it was. It was a nutritional problem. And I was just being given these diagnoses of different diseases, of different things, and given medication for these symptoms instead of treating the root cause of what was actually making me ill. And that was just the beginning. So then I was diagnosed with Hashimoto, with hypothyroidism, and you're given hormones for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one looks for the root cause, for the triggering cause of that autoimmune. And all these other little things were happening. I was very depressed. Well, it's considered normal to be depressed if you are sick,
Mm-hmm.
and it was refractory, so it wouldn't react to medications. And medicine today, how they treat refractory a depression that doesn't react to medication, they tell you to wait a little bit more with that medication. Let's see if it's going to work. Or they will increase the dose. So now you have a medication that's not working, but the side effects are doubling. Or they will add another medication. Or it's just they don't go out of this script, and they don't think outside the box. And it's very, for someone who's sick and you cannot get better and you just keep getting worse and worse and worse, you feel lonely, you feel lost. It's very sad, and and there's a lot of gaslighting in these situations. And this is the reason why I expose myself on the internet. I have an Instagram and I talk about this, and I talk very openly about it. Because somewhere out there is another Cecilia who's at this moment thinking about stop eating meat, or already has stopped eating meat, and is feeling very lonely, and is feeling sick, and and has all these doctors who are trying to help. And sometimes, I'm not saying that doctors are evil, but they're following the script that just doesn't work. It's treating symptoms, but it's not treating the root cause.
Yeah.
So it's hard. And my story keeps going, because it was 25 years without meat, and it gets worse and worse. So I ended up having cysts throughout my body. So anywhere I would have exams, I would have cysts, which now I know are from inflammation, are from anti-nutrients, a lot, of oxalates, all these green juices that are so in fashion right now. And people are just having so much oxalate with these vegetable milks, so superior of what our body can handle. And I would have, cysts throughout my body. I had 3 cysts in my thyroid, which have disappeared on carnivore, and totally disappeared, and all these other problems. So I developed gastrointestinal problems. I had reflux, and then you're giving drugs for reflux, and you end up, all these drugs give you also other symptoms, and you're given more drugs for these symptoms. It's a spiraling. No, it doesn't end. You just keep getting worse and worse. So my depression kept getting worse. My joint pains kept getting worse. I would get them on my wrists. Now I know that a lot has to do with oxalates, because it will deposit on your joints. It will deposit in your throughout, it will travel through your lymphatic system. So I would have pain in my knee, I would have pain in my ankles. And a lot of people eating only vegetables, they don't realize that not only it has to do with the carbohydrates, that you're having, a lot of carbohydrates to get all the proteins that you need from vegetables, and you're having all these anti-nutrients with the protein that you want to get. But also you're getting fungus. So people don't talk a lot about that, but meat, if you look at meat in the supermarket, it's clean. It has no bugs, it has no fungi, it has nothing. You can eat it raw. In Brazil, a lot of things don't work. We know we're in a banana republic, financial problems and corruption, but the system that controls these laws for meat production, for selling meat, they are very good. So you can go to the supermarket, and I've shown videos of myself eating, kidney raw, a little piece, because we don't eat a lot of organs. They're a small part of the animal. So a little piece of kidney, and I will, I will eat it raw. It's fine. You can eat it raw because it has no, I transport it safely, I keep it refrigerated, it has no bacteria and no fungus, but if you have to wash, if you buy plants very carefully, you have to cook them. You cannot eat a raw bean. You will die if you eat a raw bean, but you can eat a raw kidney. So I also had what later I found out was fungus from eating a lot of plants. And those can also produce oxalates in the body. So oxalates you can have from overeating fruits and plants and vegetables and leaves and green juices, but you can also produce oxalates from, candida or other fungus that are multiplying in our bodies when you're having a plant-based diet. And I don't know if you have any more questions, but it's something that carnivore brought me so much knowledge. Not only it benefit my health, my body by reversing. I had fibromyalgia. I was driving down the street one day and I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know my name. Wow. It was a very, my neurological doctor told me that it was probably a few seconds. But for a few seconds, I just didn't know how to go back home. And I knew I was driving because I was holding the steering wheel and cars were going by. And this is the doctor that is now with me throughout these last years. And he did a CT scan with contrast. And we found out that I had actually a loss of neurological function in my front lateral part of the brain due to inflammation. So carnivore diet, when I had to stop and eat only meat, I had to learn a lot. I wanted to understand what was happening. And this is, I learned about blood-brain barrier. I learned about the gut and brain axis. I learned about inflammation. I wanted to know how meat wasn't killing me. And carnivore brought me the possibility, the freedom for a better health in my body, in my brain, but also other things like learning about how death is part of life, how we romanticize a lot about, preserving animals and preserving life. And the more I ran away from that, the more I ran away from animals being killed, from, the planet being killed, my health being killed, the more towards death I was going. So running away from death was making me going towards that. And once I learned that and I accepted death as part of life, I actually started finding more life. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the animals. I'm thankful for the meat because I'm able to live a better life now. I'm actually living now, which I wasn't before.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass-fed and finished pasture-raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high-fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys. Well, that's really good. Well, it's just amazing how how far we can go down. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to eat the right way, and it's making us more and more unwell. And so many people argue that. They say, well, no, this is just people don't listen to their doctors. They don't listen to the advice. They don't follow the guidelines. That's what's wrong. No, the problem is they are listening to the guidelines. They are listening to people like these so-called experts that are just making people more and more unwell. And that's a bit of a denial when you make these recommendations. You tell people to stop eating meat, to stop eating fat, to eat more plants, eat more vegetables, and then they do. And we can see this by consumption data, by surveying people to see what they eat, and they eat more plants, they eat less meat, and certainly less red meat, and people are getting fatter and sicker than they've ever been in human history. And it's just no, 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 no. They're just not doing it right. It's just like no, they're doing what you told them to do, or at least they're going in that direction. They're eating less and less meat, and they're getting more and more problems. And the people that really follow his advice and just eat no meat and really just cut out all the fat, they're the ones that are getting hurt the most. And eating a clean diet, not having processed food. That's another argument. They say, well, the people that are improving on carnivore, it's just because they're going from a processed food diet onto a less processed food diet. And it's like, no, that's not the case. The majority of people doing this are like raw food vegans that are have just realized that like, wow, this is killing me, and my body is absolutely falling apart. Or they're doing everything the right way and taking some. I assume you were taking supplements and trying to eat clean and all these sorts of things as well. Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect. I
Mm.
like what you said about not doing it right, and that is very common. And it's blaming the victim,
Yeah.
right? It's saying you're not doing it right, it's blaming the victim. So just for people to know, I came back to Brazil, and here in Brazil, we have very good produce. It's a big country, it's a tropical country, so I have access to, fruits and vegetables, fresh fruit and fresh vegetables. I wasn't doing a vegetarian, and in the end, I was vegan. Um, I wasn't doing a processed, I wasn't buying a future burger. I was making my own. And this time when I was driving at Marginal Pinheiros, I was living in São Paulo, and I passed out, and I hit another car twice
Mm.
before I had this blank that I was driving and I didn't know who I was.
Mm.
I was actually making my own bread. I did this course, this vegan course, with natural fermentation and all these, spices and curcumin and all these things that we are told that are supposed to be healthy. I went so many times to the doctor that last year when I was vegan, that I was
Mm.
completely not vegetarian but vegan. I had vasculitis and I was very skinny, and my glucose was tested and it was 90 something, 90, which was considered normal. And that's another thing, these blood works, therefore, for people who are sick. I really don't trust these. You're normal. Sometimes,
Mm.
people are testing calcium and they're saying, oh, your calcium is normal. And then you go see, inside the bones, and
Yeah.
it's terrible. Or, now if you test my creatine, it will be high because I'm eating all this meat. So how can you say that, I have a problem? And so my glucose was normal and I had vasculitis, and this doctor told me, you're going to lose your foot. Are you diabetic? What is it? All my inflammation markers were really bad, and I was a vegan. And
Mm.
not only that, I would carry, because when you're constantly hungry, right? You're malnourished, so you're constantly thinking about food. You're
Mm.
constantly thinking about food. It's the opposite from an obese person, because the obese person is, very caloric, but not malnutrition also. And so I was skinny, but I was always hungry. I was always eating, and I would carry these mixed nuts in my purse for whenever I was hungry. And I was always, having these mixed nuts. And I would sit at a doctor's office, and during the consultation, I would take these nuts from my purse and I would offer them, like Brazilian nuts.
Mm.
It's so rich in selenium, and I would offer them, and they would say, "Oh, you're so healthy," because I would make my own mixed nuts. And I
Mm.
was seen as a prototype of a healthy person. I would bake my own vegan breads. I would even make my own vegan milk.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's how can you do it right if I was doing everything I was told to do, right? And
Mhm.
and and it was just making me sicker and sicker.
Yeah.
And I started to eat meat because when I came back to my city, I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't, cut my child's food and drive her to school. I came back to Porto Alegre. My family, they are doctors. They could take care of me. I went to the hospital. The doctors here said, we can't really help you. I had an arthritis diagnosis. I had Sjogren. I had fibromyalgia. My asthma was out of control. I couldn't do anything, go anywhere. They started me on morphine, and it was like, okay, so now we'll just wait for you to die. And I ended up at the doctor that I'm with now, and he said, let's have a talk. You're doing all these juices, you're trying to get all these nutrition, but you are failing, so you have to eat meat. And that's when I started to eat meat. And people ask me how it was. It was a slap on my face of humbleness. I spent 25 years of my life, from when I was 13 till I was 38, saying I'll never eat meat again. Facebook will remember me because I used to post this thing saying I will never eat meat again. And it was humbling because I was wrong. And it was stupid of me to not, try to something different. So I started to eat meat again when I was 38, while I was also trying all these immune treatments, oral chemotherapy, monoclonals. We had medication flown from Brazil. You asked about supplementation. I did all that. I come from an academic family. We have doctors, medical doctors. So I was supplementing through all these years, and I did more. So, I took DHEA, I took B12, and I have to tell you, my B12 on carnivore is much better than any of those years that I tried supplementing. And I don't supplement anymore. I don't find it necessary. So that's another thing. And especially maybe not so much for, United States, for Australia, where you're at, but most of the Brazilians don't have a financial stability to do veganism. It's very elitist. You have to, produce is expensive. Supplementation is expensive. So we're talking about doing it right. You spend a lot of money. And on carnivore, I can tell people, I know the numbers. I spent so much less because I don't have to take supplementations. I don't have all the expensive medications that I had to pay for. And my carnivore is, fatty meat, considered sometimes second-class meat, cheaper cuts, burgers. It's so much cheaper, not only healthier, but so much cheaper than that, plant-based, do it right diet that I was on before.
Yeah. Well, that's what I point out to people. Do a comparison sometimes of spinach. A bag of spinach, 3 ounces of spinach can be $5 or $6. And then, you have a pound of beef, ground beef or even steak. It's going to be less than that. It's going to be less per pound, per kilo. And you get perfect nutrition from the meat, and you get very inadequate nutrition. Obviously, you can't just live on spinach. They're missing massive amounts of nutrients and energy, and macro and micronutrients. And there's a bunch of toxins in there as well. And you eat too much of that stuff, and you can really hurt yourself. Liam Hemsworth put himself in the hospital with acute oxalate poisoning from drinking spinach smoothies every morning for 3 weeks. And so, you can't do that, but you can eat exclusively meat every single day. And people do and have for millions of years. And I have, and you have for years and years. And so it's a one-stop shop, and it's actually cheaper per pound. And people don't realize that, because we don't buy it per pound. We buy it in separate sort of, by different units. We just, oh, this little bag of spinach. Oh, look at that. That's this whole meal. And you make this salad out of it. There's nothing there. It's 3 ounces. And so
Exactly.
it doesn't have, and you have to add a whole bunch of other things to it as well. And whereas you can buy steak, I mean, I spend $20 a day on steak, eating perfect nutrition, eating as much as I want, and it's amazing. And I'm wet aging and dry aging and doing all this stuff. It's like, this is fantastic. I mean, you get a better steak than you would at a restaurant. You'd spend hundreds of dollars, going to a restaurant on this stuff, but you don't have to. I spend $20 and I get a restaurant quality or better steak
Exactly.
there. And so it's actually far cheaper, and then you're not going to the doctor, you're not on the medication, and you feel good, and you're actually healthy, and you're not spending all this money on supplements. I agree with you. It is very elitist to just say, well, just do vegetarian and then just take supplements. That's all you need. Well, no, you need more than the supplements. You need more than those nutrients, and there's a lot of nutrients that we don't even know about that that we still need that we don't even have names for yet. And there's an estimate that there's
Exactly.
about 51,000 different nutrients in red meat, and we don't even have names for all of these things. And so the idea that we're just going to, oh, just supplement B12 and that's all you need, that's not the case. And so people don't do as well. But then it's not just about, oh, as long as we get enough nutrients, it doesn't matter what you eat, just eat all these things just to get all the nutrients. And the point is that no, it's not just about nutrients, it's about the anti-nutrients, it's about the toxins. It's like there are things in these foods that we eat that can cause harm. And so you don't
Perfect.
want those. And people
Perfect.
just gloss over that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think lectins probably gave me leaky gut.
Mm,
And we know that a lot of the diseases start with, with gut disease. So I would eat a lot of beans. It's a staple food here, and it's a staple food for vegetarians and vegans because we're told that's where our protein would be best. Um, and so lectins would be a big problem. Gundry, the plant paradox, talks about that. I don't know why he ended up, you know, saying that plant foods. He says throughout the
mm,
book it's bad,
yeah.
but then so I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
So taking out lectins before I went to carnivore, I took out lectins and oxalates, and that was a huge improvement. Eating meat. I was on a paleo diet, no grains, no gluten, um, low oxalate was an improvement, but it wasn't enough. And that's another thing. People think that maybe, just doing a little bit. I hear some people saying, I did 20 days of carnivore and I'm not feeling better. Well, some things, I say carnivore will fix most things. It won't fix a flat tire in my
Mm.
car, but it will do a lot. But some things, if you're sick for a very long time, so I reversed asthma. I reversed Raynaud. I had Raynaud syndrome. My fingers would get, very cold and painful. And now carnivore has given me the opportunity to do cold plunges, cold bath, and I don't have the Raynaud syndrome pain anymore. So carnivore is a lot about nutrition, as you said, but it's what you eat, but what you don't eat.
Mm.
So the anti-nutrients is a big part of that. And just taking some anti-nutrients out sometimes is not enough. You have to go full carnivore. I had to go full ruminant meat, and carnivore will do that. If you start on carnivore and then you add some food back, or you start with ruminant and then you add eggs or you add chicken, you will realize that they are not good for you. And that's my case. I can't handle eggs. Chicken will flare my arthritis, and ruminant meat because it's a better quality of nutrition, and it's a better quality of most fat. The fat from ruminant meat is better. In my case, is better. So this is what I think. People think that you know they will do 10 days of carnivore and they'll be fine. Maybe some people can be better in 10 days. But if you're very sick, which was my case, you need more time to heal. And I don't think I'll ever stop carnivore diet. I feel great on it. I might add something in the future sometimes, if it's your birthday, maybe. But it's what reversed my pain. It's what given me the freedom. I'm riding a bike again. I'm doing cold plunges. I can handle being in the sun. That's another thing. People don't realize it's so much more than just nutrition. Taking out vegetable oils, seed oils, and having just meat has been able to give me the capacity to be, under the sun, breaking down my cholesterol, producing vitamin D, so I don't need supplementation, and I won't burn. I don't burn. I don't wear sunblock. I don't wear sunglasses so my eyes can see the sun, and my cells in the skin, they are made from, good doses of omega-3 and omega-6, and these animal fats won't oxidize and I won't burn. So carnivore gives us that. It gives us this freedom to be in the sun, to not have to supplement, to have nutrition, and to have physical freedom and mental freedom. I can read, I can study, and it goes so much beyond these blood work that people are so into. People ask me, so what's your cholesterol? So what's your, it's not about that. It's about feeling your best and having the freedom to choose if you want to ride a bike, if you want to do cold plunges, if you want to go to the sun, and to be able to, I think the most important part is to see my daughter grow and be part of her life. And well, that's what I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you brought up Dr. Gundry. I sort of think of him as an honorary carnivore because he absolutely talks about how toxic these plants are. He says specifically they don't want you to eat them. They have these defenses. They have these toxins. But then he calls it a paradox because, well, you don't want to eat meat either. And so you have to eat plants, but which plants do you eat and how do you go about eating them? Sort of in the Bill Schindler model of things of like, well, if you prepare these things right and safely, and then that lowers the toxic load and increases the bioavailability. And so, making those arguments is fine, but it's a paradox to him because he's like, well, you can't eat meat and you shouldn't eat plants, because they're toxic. So what the hell do you eat? Well, you still have to eat plants. So it's this paradox because you have to eat plants. Plants are the good thing, but they're also the bad thing. Well, I think I don't know what his personal beliefs are, but I do know that he was a longstanding professor of surgery and medicine at Loma Linda Medical Center, which is a Seventh-day Adventist church medical school. And I don't know if they require their professors to be of the church. I do know they require their students to be of the church. It's a private medical school. And when I was in California and I was looking at medical schools there, it just said flat out, if you are not a Seventh-day Adventist church member in good standing with a letter from your deacon saying as much, you can't even apply. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so that was certainly a strict criteria for applying students. And so, do they have the same criteria for professors? I don't know, but you would imagine that if they're not sort of in that same ideology, they may not be invited to be a professor. Um, excuse me. And certainly while he's there, you could very well be influenced by that sort of mindset. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as people who watch my podcast know, they're religiously anti-meat. They had a vision from God, or their prophetess Ellen G. White says that she had a vision from God in the 1800s, saying that meat was sinful because it caused lustful feelings, and lust is a sin, therefore meat is a sin. That was a continuation of a sentiment throughout the 1800s from the Puritans in the different abstinence movements. They were saying sex is bad, masturbation is bad, and everyone has to lower. And that was something from the early 1800s, possibly before. They were saying You need to stop eating meat and just eat more plant-based and bland plants. You don't want to have spicy food. Spicy could make you all spicy. And so you had to eat bland plant food in order to suppress your sexual urges. Women were encouraged not to eat meat because it would give them carnal desires. And so they ate of the flesh, they would think of the flesh and all these sorts of things. And, and then the Ellen G. White was a student of that philosophy that you should stay away from meat because to suppress your sexual urges. And whether she had a vision or whether she just decided that the way to get people to listen is by telling them God said it. She either way said that God said it, and people started to listen, and she started influencing people in that way. And Dr. Kellogg was her protege as a kid, and became founded. He and his brother founded Kellogg cereals. He was very influential. About 36 different cereal companies were founded around Battle Creek, Michigan, where he practiced medicine. Presidents went to him, Carnegie went to him, Rockefeller went to him, Henry Ford went to him. He was extraordinarily famous and extraordinarily influential in American medicine. And he made Kellogg cereals and these plant alternatives to meat in order to replace meat. And he said that, he telegraphed this. He said, hey, you need to eat this instead of meat so that this suppresses your sexual urges. Like he wasn't like hiding the eight ball. He's telegraphing this, saying, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. We should do this. And that was just the times back then. And now we still have those products. And then, oh, no, but they're so healthy. They're so good for you. That wasn't the argument back then. The argument was that this is a sin to eat meat and you need something else. Now we're trying to, oh, no, but it's actually good for you. Well, now you have this multi-trillion-dollar industry of the processed
Yeah.
food industry. And now they want to keep making money. And now you have the Seventh-day Adventist Church that are now backed by these multinational companies that they founded, many of these things, and have close ties with still. And a lot of members placed in very high areas. And so I don't know if Dr. Gundry is of that faith, but it sounds like he's certainly been influenced by them, and he certainly worked with them and for them for, I think, 16 years or something like that, nearly 20 years. So, by all accounts, well, I think he's a very smart guy, and I think he's very tuned in, and he even looking through the veil of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, he was able to see that plants are freaking toxic,
Yeah.
and that this is something that we need to be mindful of. And so I think it's just a matter of time before we get him over to the carnivore side, before because I think he's a very smart guy, and I think he is I think he is an honest dealer. I think he's coming at this honestly. I just think that he's, um, you know, being a bit influenced by that ideology. And I think eventually he'll sort of see the light and go like, "Oh, of course it's not a paradox. Plants are just toxic. It's not a paradox. Well, they're toxic and we shouldn't eat them, but we have to eat them, so it's a paradox. It's not a paradox. They're just toxic and we shouldn't eat them."
Exactly.
And so that's the definition of a paradox. It cannot exist. It's
Exactly.
mutually exclusive. You can't have these two things exist at the same time. It's a paradox. So when you have a paradox, you have to figure out which part of that doesn't actually exist. The part that we should eat plants, that doesn't exist. The part plants are toxic, we shouldn't eat them, that's correct. Now we should eat meat.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I totally agree with you. I think he's very intelligent, and I, he might be biased. I don't know, because what you said about the culture that surrounded him, and it's sad that we have these biased science, and we know this. We have, there were leakage from emails from, correspondence from Coca-Cola a few years back. We know that people who are, in different, in the universities and all these great resources that we have, like PubMed or other, places that you can research and you can learn so much. We know that there's an influence, financial influence, and it's sad that there's this bias, but it's what we have. And like you said, intelligent people like Gundry eventually do come around. We know that Ansel Keys later in his life was, coming back and saying that maybe the studies weren't all that, and that, fat
He damn
wasn't
well
all
knew they
that.
weren't. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
hopefully there will be a time where these paradox, like this plant paradox, will, the veil will come down and we can see better, more transparently. It's hard to say, and I think it's very dangerous when we go into religion and we're not criticizing something,
Yeah.
but it's very dangerous when you have a belief and you impose that on people. And when you are in a community of people that are vegetarians or vegans, it feels a lot like that, like a dogma. You have to be that. And once you're not, people just turn around and they walk away from you. And that is something very funny. When I was a vegetarian and then a vegan, it was like, oh, that is so pure. That is so, beautiful of you for doing that. And despite I was dying, I was killing myself
Yeah.
by that choice, but I was being so noble. And then now that I'm on carnivore, I'm the anti-hero as opposed to before. I'm curing myself by myself. I'm doing all this work. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying, I daily post about it, showing all these things, how this is a way that is healing me. I'm not saying you have to do it. This is what's working for me and for so many people. I participated on the Harvard carnivore study in
Nice.
2021, and there were 2,029 people participating in that study, and they were 6 months on carnivore, and all, there's this bunch of data in a very controlled nutritional, which is very hard to do, nutritional study, in a very controlled study, because how can you remember what you ate 52 weeks ago if you're eating everything? But if you're eating a carnivore diet, you ate meat, you ate a steak, you ate ground meat, you ate a burger. It's not that hard. So it was a very easily controlled study, and the results are so great. And so it's hard when it's a religion and it's a dogma that people are following, and you're saying you might be wrong. Just think about it. And carnivore it's funny because in a way, when you get very sick, you go back and you start praying again. You don't want to die. So you pray and you start believing maybe in a higher power. And I think I'm more spiritually connected to God, to a higher power, now that I'm eating meat. I had the opportunity in these 5 years, I had the opportunity to be in a farm, in a sheep farm, and I decided to be close to the sheep that were taking into being butchered. And this was my biggest fear. And I believe in knowledge. I believe in awareness. So I wanted to know how it happened. And people think that when you're dying, it's just so sad. It's so sad. When I was feeling very sick, it was very quiet. It wasn't sad. It was just very quiet. And people have this idea that animals are suffering also, and it's not that. Animals cannot suffer. If they suffer, it's not good for. Farmers are not evil. They're very kind to their animals. And if the meat suffers, if the animal suffers, the meat quality also gets worse. So there's no suffering in that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
it's their product too.
It's a product too.
Yeah.
And people don't want to think about that. They don't want to think that death is part of life. They don't want to think that sex is part of life. They don't want to, all of that is part of life.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about meat, right? People have to know this, especially older men and older women. If you start eating meat, it does, Kellogg was right. It does, this will change your hormones. So if you're menopausal, if you're perimenopausal, and you're thinking about hormone therapy, which, is very fashionable now also, think about doing carnivore. It does change your hormones. So,
Yeah.
so those things are part of life.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys. Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of people with their hormones changing. I've men in their 60s and 70s doubling or even tripling their testosterone, going back to levels that you would expect in a healthy 25-year-old. And the healthy 25-year-old doesn't exist anymore in great numbers. I had a 19, 20-year-old young man. His testosterone was lower than the 70-year-olds, and
Wow.
actually far lower, and they were both very low. Um, I had a 72-year-old man. He came in, his testosterone was 220. He went carnivore after several months. We checked it again, and it was up to 750. The range for in Australia, the range for a 25-year-old, healthy 25-year-old should be between 600 and 900. So he was 72 years old, and he had the normal testosterone levels. And of course, it's not just the testosterone because we didn't give him testosterone. His testosterone came up, and all his other hormones came up, and everything came up in balance. So it wasn't just this one thing that spiked up and kicked everything else out of balance. Everything went in balance. So he felt a lot better, had much better energy, had a much higher libido and sexual drive, which he made apparent during that. Was talking about how he had so much more um, sexual interest again that was exciting for him. And then I had this 19-20-year-old kid, and his testosterone was 120. So it was literally half of what the 72-year-old man's was. Put him on a carnivore diet, and in 2 months, it slammed up over 400 already. So we're testing him
Wow.
again now. It's sort of 5-6 months on. So we'll be getting his labs back in the next little while. I don't know exactly when he's coming back in, but he'll be coming back in the next sort of month or so. And we'll see what it's doing. And he wasn't even pure. It's just he started eating a lot more meat and cut out most of the garbage. But he still have cheat meals and just have some rice every now and then. And but mostly what he was eating was meat. And even just that, over tripled, quadrupled nearly his testosterone. I would expect it to continue to go up, and for him to do much better as a result of that. And we just don't think about that. We don't think about the impact this has on young adults and children and their development and elderly people. I mean, you were in the prime of your life. That's probably why you
Exactly.
you were able to weather this for 25 years, but it still broke you and destroyed your health. And you were at that time where you can get away with a lot. People in their 20s and 30s, they're drinking too much, they're smoking too much, they're staying up late, they're not sleeping, they're grinding themselves out in work and family and partying and all these sorts of things. And then you get to 40 and you're like, nope, can't do that anymore. And you were trying to do it right. You were trying to be healthy, and that was actually destroying your health as much or more as the people who were partying all the time and being irresponsible. It's pretty wild. Now
Exactly.
imagine that with a child. They're not going to develop properly. They're going to get short stature. They're going to have lower bone density, and that happens in vegans and vegetarians. That's not ethical. We're talking about ethics. That's not ethical to do that to your child, to not allow them to
No.
grow up to their genetic potential, to have more nutritional deficiencies. And it's like, oh well, they'll be fine. Well, that's something that you can make for a decision you can make for yourself. The good enough, it's okay, it's all right. You don't get to do that to kids. You do not get to do that to your child. You have a moral, ethical, and legal obligation to make sure that those kids get the best upbringing and the best nutrition that you can provide for them. If you're poor and you're destitute and you don't have access to things, you do the best that you can. But if you have the means and you are able to provide more. You have an obligation to provide them with more. And so just saying like, oh, well, this meets with my ideology, and so it's good enough. And so, it's fine. I had a doctor reach out to me a couple of years ago, basically said that. He's like, well, if there's any harm that's doing my kids, then I just, I would drop the whole, ideology with animals, like saving the animals. But, I'm just not really seeing it. And we went back and forth a few times, but I'm showing him like thing after thing, and he's always had an excuse about how this was, well, it's not maybe that big of a deal. And well, maybe that's not as conclusive. It's just like, look, you're just not getting the nutrients. That is an objective fact. And you look at kids that grow up in vegan households, they have higher rates of disease, they have higher rates of autism, they have higher rates of malnutrition, they have higher rates of short stature and lower bone mineral density. This is an objective fact. You're not providing adequate nutrients, and there are toxins in there. This is not sufficient for your children. And there was always just some sort of mental gymnastics that he just sort of justified um, harming his kids, but because that's what he was doing. He was harming his kids. And he's saying, oh, but they're healthy and they're this, and that's great. They're not as healthy as they could be. They're not developing to their genetic potential. And that's the point. It's not, well, it's good enough because they're doing well against their peers. That's not what we're talking about here. You have your
Exactly.
kid, you have your kids who are, they're both, parents are both doctors, they're wealthy, they have access to very good schools, they, are doing a clean whatever, and having all the supplements and all the sort of stuff that you would do on a vegetarian diet or vegan. I don't even know if they're full vegan, but anyway, plant-based. And, so you have highly motivated children in a household that is encouraging them to do their best. Of course, they're going to be doing better than other people. You have the environment for that, but that doesn't mean that they're doing as well as they could. They could be doing far, far better and be far healthier, far longer by doing it a better way. So I don't think that it's ethical at all. I remember hearing a quote. I forget who it was, but it was last century, and said that is a famous individual, and he was a vegetarian, and he said, vegetarians are people who have never heard a tomato scream. They've heard animals scream. They're like, well, that's horrible. I don't want that. Fair enough. But now we actually know that tomatoes do scream, and plants do
Exactly.
scream.
Plants feel, and
They
they
feel.
can see. Well,
Yeah.
they don't have eyes, but they can see, they can feel.
Yeah.
And I don't know how vegetarians and vegans will justify that, because
Oh,
you
they'll
were
just
saying
deny
that
it.
people will,
Yep.
yeah, they'll
Yeah,
deny
they
it
just they
probably.
just deny it. They say there's no sentience there, but there's more studies coming out now that there is that plants are sentient, and there was a report that came out alleging that they're actually more intelligent than humans in many respects. Like you say,
Wow,
they can see. They don't have eyes, but they have photoreceptors like we have at the back of our
exactly,
retina all over their body, right? So they
exactly.
don't have eyes, they are eyes. And they can
Their eye,
see when you're standing next to them, and they can tell the color of your shirt, apparently. I don't know how they figured that out, but apparently they can. And they scream, they communicate through chemicals, through vibrations, through they what we can't hear, but they
they
are
do through their
screaming.
roots.
And through
Yeah,
the roots. The roots is
yeah, through their,
crazy. That one's
yeah.
really remarkable. They communicate through their roots through different. There's two different types of fungus that sort of they communicate
Y-
through, and they can
yeah,
communicate to other plants and other trees in a forest. And they have like a sentinel tree that's like the matriarch or patriarch of the forest,
yeah.
and they rule it basically, and they decide where these nutrients go. Well, these guys over here are having a bit of a drought, so we're going to pull water in from 5 miles over here from these ones, and they actually shift water and nutrients over to the areas that need it, and they coordinate where these nutrients go so that the entire organism of the forest and the society and the culture of their forest can survive. And it's absolutely amazing what they can do. And we are just scratching the surface of how
Exactly.
intelligent they are. And well, that's okay. We can just chop them up. That's not a big deal. Well, it's giving us inadequate nutrition, and you're killing, sentient life. And on top of that, you're destroying the environment because, crop agriculture is devastating to the environment, and you're killing 25 times the number of sentient animals to grow 1 pound of plant-based protein than animal-based protein, because you're killing all these animals that are messing with the crop. And animals contribute to the environment and make it a better place. I mean, it's when you just go one layer deep, if you then you see there's a very different story. I mean, the vegan vegetarian arguments, they just cannot withstand even the slightest bit of scrutiny. And the only way that you can justify that is by pure denial and just say, nope, that's not happening. We're the moral compass of the planet, and you're all murderers. And it's like, I'm sorry, but no, something has to die for us to live. That's just the reality that we live in. And maybe it'll come to a point where we get replicators like on Star Trek. We don't have those yet.
No,
If we can get them, and they're exactly what we need, and there's no sort of detriment to it, I'll happily eat a replicated steak. I don't care. I don't,
exactly.
but this is the reality. And when, this is going back to Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. He said that he was talking about death, and he's like, death is just a natural part of life. This is just part of nature. And so there's no reason to be scared of it, because it's just something natural. It's just something that happens. And so if you're afraid of nature, if you're afraid of something natural, then you're a child. This is you just have to grow up and
That's
be
it.
like, this is the world we live in. And maybe it'd be nice if it was different, but it's not different. And we need to recognize that there's things you can change in society, but you cannot change nature. You cannot change the laws of nature. It's not going to happen. And so denying them and running away from them is childish. You need to grow up, recognize what's going on, and then when you see that, then you actually see, like, well, actually, if I just go along with nature and the natural world, it actually makes things better. Animals are better off, the planet's better off, we're better off. It makes a massive difference. And from an ethical standpoint, from a moral standpoint, from an ecological standpoint, and certainly a nutritional standpoint, I think that it is absolutely vital to have animal-based nutrition, or if not exclusively animal-based nutrition. You say, well, we can't feed 8 billion people with meat. That's not true. We actually will do a lot better feeding people meat than we will plants. First of all, it's way more nutrient dense. Second of all, you don't have to destroy entire ecosystems to raise them. In fact, they provide nutrients to the
The
soil.
regenerative. Yeah,
They enrich it. And the amount of land that we have for crops, the arable land is only 4% of the Earth's surface, including oceans. And rangeland and forest land, which you can run cows and livestock on, is 25% of the Earth's surface. And
exactly.
it regenerates the land. It makes it better. And we are losing 27.5 billion tons of topsoil every year by our farming practices. That's an area the size of the state of Kentucky or the UK. Countries in Europe are losing that much topsoil every single year. And that's a diminishing resource that will be gone. And it takes 500 years to grow a centimeter of this stuff. It is estimated that we have about 50 growing cycles left. That's it on the planet. And so 50 growth cycles and no more plants. So it's not about, oh, well, we have to do plants because animals won't cut it. No, plants won't cut it. Not nutritionally, not morally, not ethically, not environmentally, but we will simply run out of arable land. We are destroying the planet by doing crop agriculture. And if we continue to do it, it will be gone. We won't be able to grow anything, and we will be
Exactly.
screwed. And this is why people like Mark Zuckerberg has a bunker on Hawaii with a $100 million nuclear fallout shelter, with a bowling alley and a shopping mall and a herd of cows, right? Like, that's what
Exactly.
he's doing,
Exactly.
because he knows
Because
this.
we have this opportunity to, like you said, regenerate with the animals. So think of if if we all became carnivores, if we started to eat and people produced more meat, low income families could produce meat. Think of the impact. Most of the farmers are low income, are small farmers. Think about people think that, it's this big farmers that making a lot of money. Most of them are small families living, very tightly out of it. And we could regenerate so much of the planet. And like you said, people they want to justify the plant-based diet. They want to justify. So they won't really listen or read or study. And once you do, and like you said, you just a scrape of it, just the top of it, and you start learning and you and realizing. And like you said, it's about maturity. It's about humbleness, questioning. Maybe there's something more to this. And then reading and learning and maturing and accepting that death is part of life. And maybe, what if we're here? People keep thinking that plants are, that we are giving them life. What if it's the opposite? They are controlling us. They want us dead so we can become soil for them. So what if it's that? What if we're not going to kill animals and we're going to eat plants? What if that's not the plan? What if we're supposed to not eat plants so we become soil for them?
Yeah, it was actually funny. Someone said a similar thing. They said that things like wheat is the most successful species that has ever existed, really. And it's sort of like, if you sort of flip around, you're looking at, well, we're growing it for ourselves, but maybe it's sort of enslaved us to grow them and perpetuate their children and their babies in generation after generation after generation, so they can just have teeming life all over the place, and we sort of think about it like that. It's like, that's actually kind of interesting. There are different ant species that enslave other ants and enslave other insects to get them to work for them. And it looks like, the wheat crops and corn and things like that have actually, successfully done that to us, and to make sure that we perpetuate their species and their forms of life. It's kind of funny to think about it like that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And speaking of babies, when people, they question about, well, if there are really anti-nutrients and all that, seeds, grains are the babies of the plants.
Yeah.
So people are okay about eating baby plants. They're fine about eating baby plants. They don't mind that. And that's another thing when people want to justify their way of living, and they don't want to give up what they are actually addicted to, because a lot of people are addicted to bread and pasta and rice and potatoes. So they will justify, eating, a plate of beans and rice, which are the babies of the plants. So you're actually eating the babies, and that's fine, because they're justifying so they can keep eating that. And people are just, they keep saying, how can you eat meat every day? And I keep thinking, well, you're fine about having cereal every day. You're fine about having bread every day. Why would eating meat? And it's not, for me, it's not meat every day. So my second year of carnivore, I was just on ruminant. The second year of carnivore, when when I was more tolerant to histamines, which is something I also learned. I had to learn about these reactions that I was having. So my histamine tolerance was better. I was off medication. My DAO enzymes were better. My histamine tolerance was better. So I could have bone broth. And then people say, well, you don't have coffee? No, I have bone broth. But what about coffee?
Yeah.
What about bone broth? I have a warm cup of bone broth in the morning and I'm fine. And it gives me all the electrolytes and, and fat. So I have all these, this energy. And sometimes late in the evening, if I'm feeling tired, I'll have some bone broth with fat and I'll have more energy again. and it's fine. It's a stable energy.
Mhm.
And why would you have coffee?
Mm.
If you think about it, if it's baby plant, first it's a
Mhm.
bean,
Mhm.
it's a baby plant, and it has all these toxins and it has all this fungi with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
It's
genocide
addictive
on plant
culture.
babies. It is. And that's the thing. Is that, well, but why don't you have coffee? Is that, well, you don't have coffee? Well, why wouldn't you have coffee? It's like, well, you don't smoke meth? Why wouldn't you smoke meth? It's like, because it's freaking bad, but it gives you energy. I mean, what's the problem? It's like,
Yeah,
well, and people say, well, but you can't say that. I can actually, because these are both things that are bad for you, and we're taking them because we enjoy the short-term reactions that they give us, in spite of the long-term detriments that they provide. So,
perfect.
no, it's exactly the same thing. It's not, maybe it's to scale. Yes, meth is worse than coffee, but it's the same approach. It's the same relationship that we have with drugs we are applying to our food, which is wrong. We shouldn't do that. You eat things, you drink things that are good for you, provide nutrition and benefit to you, not things that are going to hurt you in the long run just because you want that little response. Ooh, it tastes nummy. Yay. Like, no, that's not why we do this. And people have said, just eating meat every day, not eating anything else. I mean, like, your life sounds, boring as hell. And I just responded, I was just like, if your main enjoyment out of the day is just what you eat, your life is boring as hell. I eat
Yes,
food so that I can get nutrition, so I can go and do things with my life. My
perfect.
entertainment is not from the food that I eat. I've enjoyed every steak I've ever eaten in my life, every one. And but that's not why I eat steak. I eat steak because it's good for me. I eat meat because it's good for me. And then I go and do things that entertain me. I go hang out with friends. I go see, friends or family. I go work out. I play sports. I'm mostly just working now, but I do things that I enjoy. And now I have time for it. I have energy for it. I have the health for it. And that was something that you said as well, when someone said, how can you eat meat every day? How can you just eat meat every day? And what I immediately thought of is like, how can you be sick every day? How can you be okay with that? How can you be okay with feeling subpar? How can you be okay with feeling like garbage? How can you be okay with having fibromyalgia and Sjogrens and Raynaud's and autoimmunity and diabetes and depression and kidney failure and have no energy and feel miserable and be on 20 medications? How can you do that every day? That's wild to me.
Perfect.
Whereas, like, you just eat meat, you enjoy it, it feel wonderful, you don't have any of those problems, and you go out and enjoy your life. People just don't understand. They're looking at it from the wrong direction, and they are really missing out. It is just such an amazing feeling, just being out of that whole system of being sick all the time and being miserable all the time, and you can just go and just be
Exactly.
healthy and just live your life. It's absolutely remarkable.
That is perfect. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not worrying about if you're gonna get sick later in
Mm,
the day, if you're gonna have pain, if you're
mm,
gonna have lack of energy. If it's having, first of all, you don't waste time because it's very quick to
mm,
make, a carnivore meal. And then you eat it and you don't have that, you don't feel full, you don't feel tired. You can go straight to work or you can go straight to doing something else. And if you don't have something to eat, you are fine also, because that's another thing. It's easy to fast. You're metabolically fasting most of the time, even if you eat, if you don't, have a lot of protein. That's another thing that, during carnivore, during these 5 years, I've learned that if you eat too much protein or, adding a little bit of fat, it will keep me in ketosis. So I don't have this roller coaster of energy and you know, of being hangry, hungry
mhm.
and angry, or just this, um, after eating a meal, just feeling tired because I have to digest all these fiber and carbohydrates and everything else. So it's not time consuming, it's not energy consuming, and it's not mental and emotional consuming, because like you said, you get that part of your life where you get sick, and you get tired and you have low energy, it's over. You're in another chapter where you can just go and enjoy your life and fill it with, and you can fill your life and you can fill that space with better things, better choices.
Yeah.
So for you, it's, it's exercising. I don't lift a lot of weights.
Mhm.
I've gained muscle without lifting weights,
Mm.
but I do lift a little bit because I'm getting older and I know it's important. But I can enjoy swimming in a very cold pool or reading a book, things that I just couldn't do before when I wasn't on a carnivore diet. And I don't have to think about what's going to be my next meal, because this is another thing. Women are always, especially if you have, if you have a house, if you have children, you're always thinking, what am I going to cook for the next meal? I have to go to the supermarket. What am I going to buy? And that mental constant thinking of how I'm going to do this, what I have to do, is also very energy draining. And if you're doing carnivore, it silences that. If you
Mhm.
go to the supermarket, you'll get the meat, that has a better price or has the better fat that you want with it, or, and then what am I going to cook? I'm going to cook meat. So all this mental exhaustion also about preparing food,
Mhm.
it's gone. It's
Yeah.
gone.
Very good. Well, Cecilia, that was wonderful. It was lovely to meet you and to hear your story, and I know that it would be very inspirational to many people out there. The majority of people on my channel that watch me were in your exact situation. They tried plant-based, they tried to do this the right way, they tried to be healthy, and they listened to that advice, and it destroyed their health. And so hopefully this inspires more and more people who are in that situation going like, ugh, do I need to make a change? What should I do? Hopefully that encourages them to be brave enough to branch out and just see for themselves, because that's all that matters. That people say, well, it's N1, it's anecdotal. No, that's the only thing that matters. The anecdote is the only thing that matters, is your anecdote. It doesn't matter what anybody else has done with any other diet ever. The only thing that matters is what happens with you. If you are eating plant-based and you're getting sick, that is what is important. If you start eating meat and you drop the plants and you get better and you reverse all your illnesses and you come off your medications, that's the only thing that matters. And so hopefully this, I'm sure it will inspire many other people to give it a try as well. So I thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak about meat. I'm a meat enthusiast.
Yeah, me
I
too.
am very thankful for meat. I'm very thankful for people like you who are, speaking about it. I had the chance to know about carnivore diet through Michaela Pedersen,
Mhm.
and her telling her story, her father telling her story on Joe Rogan's
Mhm.
in 2019. And then all these wonderful people like yourself, medical doctors, and also people with their anecdote stories, their personal stories. And like you said, that's what matters.
Mhm.
It's this is what life should be about feeling your best and doing the best that we can do while we are here living. And that is what carnivore gave me, the opportunity, this freedom to be my best and to do the best I can do each day a little bit better, I hope.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for that. Can you tell us where people can find you online and to see more of your work?
Sure. I'm on Instagram. I speak in Portuguese on my Instagram because
Mhm.
it's mostly for Brazilians.
Mhm.
So my Instagram is Cecilia Berlim, and I am not a film editor. I
Mhm.
don't have the latest iPhone. I spend my money on my carnivore diet
Yeah.
or my hobbies.
Mhm.
And so my videos and my editing are not the best, but they are, I hope, inspiring. And I'm always trying to bring better information that will bring people to meat.
Yeah.
So to enjoy meat, even if they're not on carnivore, just like you said, just
Mhm.
increasing the amount of animal protein, good quality animal protein, will make a big difference.
Yeah. So important. Well, great. Well, I'll put the link for your Instagram channel down in the description. People can find
Thank
you more of you there. Cecilia, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
you. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you. I admire so much your work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. Please leave a comment and hit like and share this with anyone who you think would enjoy it. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.